Well, they're enforcing the regulations that exist. It's the police's job to enforce the law, and that's part and parcel of how we do things in this society. To believe that they wouldn't be enforcing the law as stringently even after legalization of cannabis for licensed sellers. Remember, these are unlicensed sellers. I can't see them not getting raided after legalization.
So you bring up the point of licenses as well. Mm-hmm. That factors into the business in a myriad of ways, but if you have somebody that's unlicensed versus licensed, how could that impact their business?
Well, if you're the licensed seller and you've paid for the license and you've got the regulatory overburden, which is not small, and you've got a competitor who isn't licensed, hasn't paid for that license, and isn't incurring the regulatory overburden cost, the compliance cost, they're at a huge price advantage and a huge cost advantage, and that's an unfair playing field anymore. You've got one set of rules for one group of people, another group of people are playing by a different set. That's just patently unfair.
And in terms of cost, what might that look like?
Well, it's a cost advantage for the unregulated and unlicensed producer or seller. So in this case, it would mean that they'd have less overhead. They wouldn't have to be hiring someone to interface with the government in that compliant type manner.
When it comes down to the 6 shops and whatnot, there's consideration given for good behavior. Mm-hmm. How do you think that these six organizations that were raided, how might they fare come legalization?
That's a good question, because remember, the provincial governments put in structure where you have to be considered to be reputable, which is rather poorly defined. I don't know how they're actually operationalizing that. I think getting raided for non-compliance with a police order this close to legalization is not going to go in their favor.
And why do you think some of these businesses opted to stay open? We had 13 or so dispensaries, but 6 remained open.
It's a gamble. Knowing that there are only going to be about 6 licenses granted for the city. If you don't think you're going to get one of those licenses, why would you not stick around and try and make as much money as you possibly can? And if you really do, in fact, believe you're helping people, why wouldn't you keep doing that? If you think you're going to get closed down once licenses are issued, why wouldn't you run as long as you can and help as many people as you can and make a fair bit of money along the way? And they take all the people who meet the minimum criteria to be a licensed retailer in Regina, and they draw up names out of a hat, basically. So if there are 13 names go in, 6 licenses granted, 7 people are going home unhappy.
Do you feel that this system could lead to there being some of the illicit dispensaries that we saw cropping up after legalization?
It's possible. I think this system has the best chance of all the other ones being implemented across the country to minimize the likelihood of that happening. The people who are paying for these licenses and winning these lotteries have an incentive to compete really hard against the illegal guys and win. And they're going to have enough latitude, hopefully, to do that. Whereas if you're looking at, say, New Brunswick or Ontario, where it's government only, governments don't have those same incentives and don't have that same latitude or flexibility to compete. And that's going to really handcuff them, and it's going to make it much more likely that the illicit market and illegal dispensaries, your typical drug dealer, if you will, survives.